I mean, it's hard, like, like everything I do reminds me of him. When I first came home from New York City after this happened, the first thing I saw was his guitar, and I broke down. I mean, I cried for like an hour. We would wake up, one of us would make breakfast. Usually he would make breakfast. We'd both be kind of rushed because we both hit snooze a lot. But sometimes he would leave a lot earlier than I. Anyways, he'd kiss me and then he'd kiss the baby, and then off to work we would go, and we I know it's just weird now to stand here and think about how that's not my morning anymore.
We in America are immigrants, or the children of immigrants. We are one people, but a people welded from many nations and races. Century of immigration has brought in many people from Canada, and more recently, there has been a lively migration from Mexico, as well as from the Caribbean area. Today, these people of every nation and race have become Americans all, a people still diverse, but sharing common aspirations and drawn together in their common contribution of the skills and talents that have made America a great nation.
I remember one time I was driving and I was kind of speeding, and a police officer stopped me. And I get, you give him your driver's license, and he's like, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Massachusetts." And he's like, no, where are you really from?" And I know that what he's asking me is, in his racial imaginary, I'm Black, my name is of Spanish origins. And when I said I was Dominican, he perked up. He got really happy because he was a baseball fan. And so I started telling him baseball stories. He let me off, right? But this question of where are you really from? My parents are immigrants. They're from the Dominican Republic. I was born in eastern Massachusetts. We lived in Massachusetts, we lived in New Hampshire, we lived in Florida. So it really kind of depends context and place when people ask me that question. So it's who belongs and who doesn't get to belong.
My mom used to travel to the U.S. back and forth because she was a single mother, so she couldn't support us down there. It wasn't enough for her to be able to for us to live comfortably, for us to be able to see her enough. She was by herself. So we lived most of our lives with my aunts. My aunts basically raised my brother and I. It became kind of normal for us to be left for a couple years. She kept in touch very often. Things at school. We had Mother's Day events where we did dances for mothers. We used to have crafts, and I always had my aunt there. I love my aunts very much. I'm very grateful for what they did, but it got to the point where I could no longer watch her leave again. So she told me that she would bring us over to the U.S.
I think a lot of the false information about immigrants, it's not easy to get here. It's super hard, in fact.
I came into this country as an immigrant. I was not born here. I came into the country as an F1 visa, doing my master's in law from St. Louis University. So I went through the same process what most of my clients are going through today. The only difference is there is a lot of waiting time and a lot of hassles, a lot of stress, a lot of tension, a lot of documentation, a lot of paperwork. That's the difference. But we went through the same process, becoming on F1, going into the H1B, filing for the green card, getting the green card, and becoming a US citizen. That's the dream from A to Z.
So my mother went to they call them coyotes, which is a coyote, person who crosses illegally people to the US. Till this day, I don't know how much in debt she got back then to bring my brother and I. In Mexico City, they took us to close to the Rio Grande, and I just remember walking through the desert. During the first day, we walked through the desert for about 4 to 5 hours with 20, 30 other people. It was really, really hot. It was during the summer. Once we walked through the desert, from the point where we started to where we got just walking, trucks picked us up. And they split us up. It was a huge group of 30 people. They split us up. And it was my mom and my brother and I. It was actually 2 of my aunts and my little cousin. My little cousin must have been 2 years old. We got on these trucks and they were racing through the desert. I mean, they must have been going 55, 60,000 miles an hour. The car where I was in with my mom, there was syringes in the cup holders. There was syringes and there was little bags. I didn't know what that was. I thought the guy was sick. I was too young to realize what they were actually doing. It wasn't until I turned like 15 that I kept going back to it that I realized that they were shooting up heroin while they were driving us. My mom was scared out of her mind. She didn't know, obviously. It's not like you find a resume for these people that are gonna bring you over. You basically just know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And then we boarded a plane, which now came to figure out we used somebody else's papers. And we took a plane from Texas, and I arrived to New York City in an airplane. So.
And you were like?
I was 9 years old.
9 years old.
9 years old.
Think of me as an immigrant who came into the country. The first thing I did was, the moment I was set with my thing, I got my green card in 2000, but in 2004, I was already doing opening up a law firm. Opening up a law firm is giving job to 3 or 4 people. I'm a small business guy, but it is these kind of small businesses which creates jobs, which technically builds the economy. It's not the big companies, billion-dollar companies. So it is the entrepreneurship which comes with the immigrants.
You know, there's this false conception that they're all low education, low skill. That is not true. It's kind of like a U shape. So you have a lot who are low skill, low at like high school or less education. But then there's a high number of professional degrees and PhDs in science, technology, engineering, and math, PhDs in in other fields, business, a lot of doctors. What you see is that you have low skill and high skill immigration. It balances out the labor market. The argument is if you increase the supply of workers, wages fall. Yes, if you're looking at a static supply and demand model, that's true. But we live in a very dynamic world and there's all these feedback effects. And one really important thing, we think about increase in supply of workers. That means that there's increase in productive capacity of firms and businesses, which means more business investment. Low-skilled workers create demand for high-skilled workers. So in industries where you have people in manual labor, agriculture, construction, these are still fields where you do need communication. So when they come into those sectors, they create jobs for US born or native English speakers. The largest immigration to the US is European immigration in the 19th century, and that was an open border policy. If you were able-bodied and you got off the ship at Ellis Island and you looked healthy, you were admitted. You came, there was a path to citizenship. Currently, there is no real path to citizenship for people who are here. There's about 11 million undocumented people here. But the crazy thing is people think immigrants, refugees, the majority are documented actually. The majority of people do have papers, either papers here to work or permanent residence or on their way to getting citizenship. The only sort of provisional way, to be able to stay here is the DACA program.
So DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. The only culture they've known is the US culture. Sometimes the only language they speak is English. So the Obama administration took the viewpoint that it's cruel to have those people, have those minors who came here be deported. So what the DACA program did was if you're a minor. And if you're under 31, you came here before you're 16 years old, you can apply.
It's basically a work permit. It gives you a social security number. You have to renew it every 2 years. You must have graduated from high school or have a GED. You have to have no criminal record. You have to get your fingerprints taken. You are basically guaranteed that you won't be deported unless you commit a crime. Last time I renewed, it took a month after my work permit expired for me to get the other one. So I was let go of my job because they couldn't legally hire me without my social security number, which expired. This time around, luckily, thank God, that one date overlapped the other. So I wasn't left in the country without a status like I did 2 years ago.
The way the processing is different. In 1950s, 1940s, the people were welcomed. Now it's not a question of being welcome. You are unwelcome. That's how it is.
We're in the middle of a crisis on our southern border. Beginning today, the United States of America gets back control of its borders, gets back its borders.
We've been seeing a lot of people just completely scared. They want to know what their rights are because of this new administration, what they're going to do.
My grandmother is a U.S. citizen, and I think what's really sad is that when this election happened, you know, she said to me, she was like, can they take my citizenship away? Because there's so much information out there. There's so much chaos, it seems, also in this administration.
I was shocked. I just could not, I didn't think Trump winning was a possibility. I was absolutely I was mortified, really, because of the way he ran his campaign. It's almost as if like he really just wants to make America white again.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
I read his first 100-day plan, and I don't remember when that came out, but as soon as it did, I remember reading it because my husband, you know, being an immigrant who was reporting into ICE, I had to know what we were up against. And I remember reading his 100-day plan and reading that his plan was to deport people that were here illegally and who had committed felonies. And I said, okay, well, with all the other things we have to fight with this new administration, that doesn't apply to Joel. So I could like take a deep breath that he wasn't going to target my family. I was wrong. In 2004, he was living in North Carolina with his brother. He and his brother were renting the house, and they were renting a room out to somebody else. He was at work. The police came to the door, and his brother opened it because he didn't have anything to hide, and they were there about something else. The police saw a marijuana plant and called Joel at work and said, "We've arrested your brother for felony intent to sell." And Joel immediately raced down to the police station, and even though the plant didn't belong to either one of them, and even though Joel wasn't even home at the time, the fact that his name was on the lease allowed the police to charge him as well. Usually the check-ins take about 10 minutes, and 45 minutes later, I got a text from him saying, "Babe, it's not looking good. They're going to detain me for deportment." And I was like, he's kidding. This isn't happening. He's joking with me. His brother called me crying, and that's when I knew that it wasn't a joke. And I broke down. He said his ICE officer would allow me the privilege to come back and say goodbye to Joel. Actually, that was the officer said that to me, that it was a privilege to be able to say goodbye. And I said to him, "Why is this happening after all of these years, Officer Palmer?" I said to him, and he said to me, "It's because of the narcotics charge and the missed court date." And so I turned to Joel and I said, "Narcotics charge? I thought this was a misdemeanor marijuana possession charge. Like, we all make mistakes in life. I'm your wife. Like, And he said to me, this ICE officer said to me, "No, it's the misdemeanor marijuana charge." And I said to him, "You are ripping a family apart. Like, I hope you're able to sleep tonight. And Major gave me his wedding ring, his shoelaces, his belt, and his jacket. And he had to, like, literally separate us because I wouldn't let him go. And it's kind of been a nightmare now for the last 2.5 weeks without him.
You know, you hear stories about how they come at 3, 4 in the morning because there's nobody there to record them or anything. We've been telling people ever since this new election, we've been telling people, you know, just stay calm, don't talk to anybody, don't open doors, your basic rights.
It's almost like I don't want to believe that it's true. I keep hearing all these stories, but in my head I keep telling myself they won't come for me. It's not just the fear of me, it's the fear of my family, it's the fear of my neighbors. It makes you feel like you matter less. Your family is less important than somebody else's. They will be willing to separate me from my daughter, my 2-year-old. She's 2. What would she do without me? It's the most heartbreaking thing that you can think of, because why is my family less important than somebody else's? All I am trying to do is provide for my family, is make a life for myself and for my baby. It's the scariest feeling in the world. Ever since the new president was elected, every time at dinner time, I try to save that moment because I don't know when that will change. All I can do is stay out of trouble, which I've been doing, work, pay my taxes, but you just don't know anymore.
Show me what democracy looks like!
This is what democracy looks like!
Show me what democracy looks like!
This is what democracy looks like!
Show me what democracy looks like!
This is what
One thing that I think is really important is seeing all the solidarity, all the protests, all the resistance. I always wonder, you know, if people are making the connections, right? Those of us who would go to protest at an airport against a travel ban, right? Would these same people also go to a Black Lives Matter march? Are they gonna stand up as this administration continues to like roll back protection of transgendered people? These things are all related, and I think we need to stand in solidarity with each other. And I hope that people realize like what Muslim Americans are facing right now, Black and Latino people have been facing. If we care about refugees and immigrants, then we must also care about Black lives, Latino lives. I think what we're seeing right now in Standing Rock, you know, these things are all related.
I love my country. I love who I am. And I love where I came from because it's made me who I am. But I'm a Mexican American. This is where I belong. This is my home.